Or shotgun, something with a good spread on it.
We're already have 4 people.
They're looking at me?
Currently, yeah, they're looking at you.
Oh no!
That's not going to. The chat is not going to be
Oh,
moderated.
there's a couple more somewhere here. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I see them come in. I got a ticket.
Maybe they were just given a ticket by accident. They just stumbled in and they were just like.
Did you put the Weavers on the list?
The what?
The Weavers?
The waivers?
The Weavers.
Oh.
She asked for Appalachian music. I'm like, the Weavers are like the OG.
I tried asking her and she just didn't. You didn't tell me anything.
I can tell you what the song sounds like. That's about it.
I mean, all bluegrass sounds the same.
I'm fighting words.
You know what? All of your rock music sounds the same.
Okay, I won't actually deny that grunge music kind of has that.
It does.
Okay, but you're talking about like when we were actually like mining coal. Like, are we going back to like the 1800s, 1900s? Like when they're making their
We're going back
unions and
500 million years.
Okay, but we're talking about music. Like, did you get comparable
Oh,
music?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you're getting the Weavers who's like taking samples from like the late 1800s, or are you doing like Nirvana? And
He's got Nirvana.
bluegrass?
There was Nirvana.
Yeah, he's
Because
got
like
Nirvana
one,
and
I feel
bluegrass.
like the roots of one. I think, did you get like actual like period specific music for this area?
Oh, I should have given you the damn whales. I didn't even
I
think
need
about
comparables. Like, what were they listening to in the
Yeah, it's okay.
evening?
It's not good. It's not
Nirvana.
Right, Nirvana and like,
Well,
1901.
when you Google Seattle music, what comes up? It's Nirvana.
Right, but I would have been like, if I'm gonna play this song, like when's the
Depends on what decade you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, it doesn't even include like Seattle jazz era. It doesn't include.
Oh my gosh, I should have told you to play Carbon Leaf. They're from Virginia.
I did this at like 9:30 last night because I was just like, it's a little lecture thing. What's up, Don?
My kids are watching.
Like up there?
Hi guys.
All the roads going out to the school park. Roads going out and the back out toward the school.
Really?
Everything. And there's a long one.
Of course he's logic.
Creek of them.
Really?
Yeah, and it's separate, you know.
Right. But still.
That stops people going up there. But, yeah, so.
Oh God, the next one.
And I asked him, he didn't go down to the path going down to the foundation. So I asked him to clean that up. And he said,
Oh, this is a good one.
Really?
I sort of recognized him.
I'm not gonna question it. I'm not gonna question it.
Make it easier for you.
If, as you say, if somebody's willing to go up there and mow for us, then somebody's willing to go up there and mow for us. So that's how I look at
They're
it.
doing the ghost town tour on 26th.
Wait.
I'm not doing that on behalf of them.
Oh no, I knew that.
I'm not doing it on behalf of them.
Okay.
That's it.
That's all.
That's it. We're not actively broadcasting.
Okay. So when I see it on Facebook, that means it's not really being broadcast.
No, it's just not happening. It's just not happening at all.
I see.
I'm surprised it's not. Do you know how many Facebook groups he put this presentation on? A lot. He's been freaking me out the whole time. Like, there's gonna be so many people online, and I'm just like, I have stage fright, so
Oh yeah, but you can't see them. But you shouldn't have
don't
stage.
tell me that.
He's been after me to do the Carbon Canyon. Same thing, stage fright.
Yeah,
You know, I know a lot about the Carbon Canyon.
yeah. Like, I know a lot about geology, but I can promise you I'm gonna get up here and freeze at least once, maybe twice. Oh, yeah.
We'll root for it. Even though you're the underdog, we'll root for it.
Excuse me. The Appalachians are ancient. They're beautiful.
And they're
Honestly-
higher mountains are they?
And again, we have
They're just old.
Yeah.
Okay, they're just old. They're ancient ladies.
So again, we have Macklemore, Jimi Hendrix, and Nirvana being played in here today. Who would have ever in a million years guessed? just wanted to celebrate both areas' complex and wonderful musical history.
It sounds like it's more of your music.
I've played multiples of your songs.
Yeah, doing angels.
It's 2 o'clock, or 1 o'clock.
We're still having people filter, you know, it's not... Actually, what we could do
Is
is...
that your music?
Yeah. Again, we've had Nirvana and we've had Jimi Hendrix play. So I thought it was. Here, we'll
I like it.
let's get the.
I figured that was for the war that was coming. Yeah, right? Might have to call an ambulance.
Here.
Am I
Here,
too tall?
We'll turn up the.
Am I gonna block you?
Because then you get the hype music. Now I'm just scaring her at this point. It's kind of hilarious if we're being honest.
You're hilarious.
Yeah.
Are you micing or what?
Yeah, we're.
Just with the microphone?
Yeah.
Okay.
I tried to get the dual working.
It didn't work. Okay, so you use the mic. Okay.
Just.
Is it on? This little dude. Yeah, we got it.
Check mic.
Check mic. Check.
Oh.
Can you hear me? A little bit? You need it louder?
Yeah, I need to be a little louder.
Make me louder, Zach. Or I can just talk, because I got a really loud voice. You project well. I think that's the volume. How about that? Any better? Better?
Perfect.
Perfect? I'm perfect, thank you. Zach gets back here, we'll do some introductions and get going.
Don't tell anybody, but there's cookies back there.
Yeah, grab a cookie. If you didn't get a white ticket, let me know, raise your hand, because we'll have a handout later. Everybody get a white coupon ticket?
Yeah.
No? We'll have to get some for you. All right, I'll get them. I'm Sherry, I'm a volunteer here, and it's my privilege today. I'm going to introduce Zach, and he'll introduce the guests.
Oh, that's never good.
Zach Pratt is one of our famous, wonderful volunteers, who is, what should we call you, the stepchild of Franklin now? Well, Don's the mayor, so you gotta be the something, anyway.
I'm not cool enough.
Grandson of whatever. Anyway, Zach has a background in geology. He's really very informative and knowledgeable, and it's gonna be a very fun presentation today. You'll learn a little bit about coal. So, thank you. We're on from 1 to 2, right?
Something
All
like
righty.
that, or however it goes.
Here you go, Zach. It's all yours. Thanks for doing this.
Introduce me nicely.
Maybe.
Nicely.
Maybe. Well, so first off, you'll have to forgive me because I'm not used to using microphone. Normally, you'll see me with the actual
So
headsets.
you gotta like.
Yeah, I know it's got to be right in my face, like I'm an MC, if you will. I'm also loud enough so most of you can hear me. I don't know about you, so it might be more for you than me. Anyways, some of you know who I am. Some of you know who I don't. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Sherry. It's been a while since I've given a presentation. It's been a busy summer. Lots of prep work going on. For this specific presentation, we've got a bunch of other ones coming up. We'll get into that. But I am so thoroughly pleased to have a very good friend here with me today, who has literally traveled across the country specifically for this. So that's worth something besides the fight that's about to come. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this is son Gorman. She is from North Carolina. Not originally, though, but North Carolina. So everybody give her a nice little black diamond welcome. Big deal. I've met Son through school, and we are constantly bantering about whose geology is
Cooler.
See, here we go. But ultimately about who's better, and it has all culminated in a presentation here at the museum in Black Diamond. So home field advantage for me when it comes to this. When it comes to how things are going to go.
I heard they've had hurricanes there.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's not something that we have here, but ultimately that's how it goes. So I think if you're ready, I'm ready. It's
Sure.
it's what you've traveled across country for, if you will.
I'm just a
So
little nervous.
yeah, of
A little
course.
nervous.
But before we get into things, if my little clicker is working, just want to establish something real quickly and kind of give a little bit of acknowledgement to the tribes that were here at one point in time. Don't ask me how to pronounce those names because I'm not going to try, but I just want everybody to keep in mind, especially with Indigenous Peoples Day coming up here, that there were tribes here before us. There are tribes here still today. Those are the two main tribes that were specifically in this area, living amongst Black Diamond over at Jones Lake, down at Lake Sawyer, crossing the mountains, up and over Stampede Pass, Chinook Pass, all that good stuff. So just want to pay acknowledgement to that. But today, we're actually going to start the story of both of our regional areas. So how many people here have been to the Cascade Mountains? How many people here have been to the Appalachian Mountains? Oh, that's actually a pretty fair comparison. That's kind of surprising. So we can't really be biased one way or another. We can try, but we can't be.
I am biased.
But you guys all really know my shtick and my song and dance, if you will, even if you haven't been here in person. You've seen me playing around. But I think it's best that we actually start with the person that we don't know, you.
Yes.
So I'm going to hand over the mic and the clicker to you.
Nice, thanks.
Let her rip.
All right. So,
Hold it a little closer.
has anybody here heard of Pangea? Everybody? Yeah? So we're going to go into the story of Pangea, because that's where the Appalachians kind of started. So 500 million years ago, imagine a world, kind of like this. There were a couple of continents. We have the Europe and Asia area. That's not really what it looked like, but it's kind of like that, just to kind of show where everything was. We had the North American, and then we had Gondwana land, which was kind of a mixture of Africa, South America, Australia, those parts of the country. And between those, now we have the Atlantic Ocean. Oh, I keep moving the microphone. Now we have the Atlantic Ocean. That used to be called something, the Iapetus Ocean. So it was a little different. Put the clicker down. I'm a little nervous. Forgive me. So if you look at the pictures, you can see here's Gondwana land and ancient North America, and that's kind of where our story starts. That's where everything kind of comes together, literally. Oh, I clicked the wrong way.
Oh.
Okay. So our story is going to take a really dramatic turn. The Earth tectonics plates, they're these giant slabs, as he's probably explained before. They just kind of move. The Iapetus Ocean started to shrink, kind of like two graham crackers colliding together, if you can imagine that. They just kind of buckle and break and just move. So this movement triggered events that are known as orogenies, which is pretty much just intense mountain building. The first orogeny, called the Taconic orogeny, about 480 million years ago, it's thought to be caused by volcanic arcs and island chains smashing into North America, kind of similar to what's going on here in the Cascades. As the Juan de Fuca subducts, it pushes land. Little different, but kind of same. Whoops, sorry. I don't know how to do this.
That's not touchscreen. I'm not fancy like you.
Oh, okay. Oh, I messed up. Okay, so anyways, the next one is called the Akkadian orogeny, and that was about 375 to 359 million years ago. And the fragments of Gondwana land, right about here, they started to get pushed up onto the land. So that crumpled the crust. I'm sorry, I have to look at my notes. I'm anxious. So that started to crumple the crust, and it started to push everything forward, and it started to build these mountains right here. And you can see it goes up and kind of around.
So to draw a quick comparison at this point in time,
I'm not going to use this.
you see Virginia at this point in time here. Notice Washington ain't even on the
Yeah,
map.
Washington's
So
not even on the map.
their story is much older than anything that we've already parroted at this point in time.
Which is why the ancient ladies are better.
Oh. Youth before beauty.
All right, so now, 440 to 260 million years ago, the Iapetus Ocean continues to close, and then a crucial event happens. Gondwana land in the purple and ancient America collide. And I mean, this was dramatic. There was land folding and breaking and building, and it was violent. Oh, I'm so nervous.
Violence is never the answer.
Yes. Well, in this case it was. So that was known as the Alleghenian orogeny. If anybody's familiar with the Allegheny Mountains up in northern East Coast, that's kind of where everything started. And that's kind of the pivotal moment for the creation of the Appalachians. That's where they got their height. That's where everything kind of crumpled and finished and pushed everything together. And these mountains used to be about as tall as the Alps. They were huge, bigger than the ones here.
Size isn't everything.
Look. All right. So, after the Iapetus Ocean closed, the Earth kind of entered a new chapter. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So everything comes together. This then creates Pangaea. The Appalachian Mountains were at the very heart of Pangaea as we knew it. They are ancient. They have seen more things than probably anything else on this planet. They just, they were the heart of a supercontinent. So after the continental collision, as you can imagine, when things push together, they're then going to be forced apart. After that continental collision, Pangaea broke apart and moved very slowly into kind of what we know of today. North America, Europe and Asia, Africa, South America. Now with that, the Appalachians over time have been subject to erosion. Wind, rain, glaciers, especially up north around the Great Lakes, kind of cut everything down and really took them from their former glory and made them into the beautiful blue skyline hills that you see today. They used to be majestic and huge, but...
Yawn.
Get out of here. So, from the folded and faltered layers to the remnants of an ancient seafloor, there are limestone caves out there deeper than any other point that you could really get to. They're magnificent. You can go and touch what used to be the bottom of an ocean floor millions of years ago just by standing on the top of a mountain. And it's absolutely amazing. So, this is kind of a picture to show you what they look like today. Imagine these beauties, rocks and everything, but thousands of feet taller.
So the important thing that I find interesting is she mentioned the old erosive processes. When you're hiking out here in the Cascades, you'll notice that a lot of our peaks are kind of more straight. They have very rough, hard edges, and that is indicative of material that has actually risen up and it hasn't had the chance to experience that kind of rounding erosion, like what we would get with glaciers or snow or river melt and so on and so forth. So like with these ridges here, you notice in comparison to like if we look up at our beautiful Cascades up there, these are more smooth and it's not just one ridge. When you look at the overall Appalachians and you compare it to the length of the Cascades as well, you'll notice significantly higher peaks over here, but that more rounded river edges that she was kind of discussing a little bit with that. So
yeah. So a lot of the southern Appalachians were cut through by water. The glaciers didn't necessarily reach down that far. Further up north, you'll get more of the U-shaped valleys, the gorges, because that's where the glaciers were at that point. So, if you ever have the opportunity, the blessing to stand underneath of an Appalachian peak, I hope that you really remember, yes, the Cascades are beautiful. I've spent the past 3 days, camping in them, and they've been amazing, but nothing really stands true to me than the ancient, older than bones Appalachian Rockies, and from the depths of the Iapetus Ocean to the heart of Pangaea, these mountains have witnessed millions of years of geologic drama, and the Cascades ain't got nothing on that. I'm sorry, they really don't. So yeah, you should come visit sometime. That's actually a picture of me. I was at Worley's Cave, which is out in eastern Tennessee. It's probably unfortunately flooded at this point. But I have gone into the depths of the earth and nothing compares. Not even the Cascades. So that's me. Ancient, beautiful, sassy ladies. I guess it's now on to you, Zach.
well, you're just wrong, and that's the key to all this. So a lot of you guys have already kind of heard my shtick, so I don't have to go into as much detail as previously stated. But for time's sake, we'll kind of review a little bit of our story, which I will admit we are a little younger,
A lot younger.
more rowdy than what we've got going on there. So we know our lovely area of Black Diamond, Franklin, and all of that good stuff. But really for us, our story here specifically begins more around the time about 50 million years ago. So this is after the dinosaurs are gone. They've been away now for a couple million years at this point in time, but we're still in an absolutely hot, humid, warm climate. And the thing about that that's interesting is that from her period all the way through our period was continual warmth, which is really fascinating because before her time period, when her actual rocks began to form, we were coming out of a long-term ice age. Then we entered a long-term warm period. And then it started to go down, and now we're back in an ice age as we are by definition. But during this time period of 50 million years ago, I want to point out that we had no Cascades, we had no Olympics. You could theoretically stand on a hill and say Wenatchee and see the Pacific Ocean, which is just a mind-boggling thought, because while your mountains might be old, you know, we see our mountains today, and the fact that I could see eastern Washington from here theoretically, it's kind of a striking thing to know that in 50 million years of time, which is a snap of the finger in geologic time scale, that happened. But during this time period, we have massive rivers, and I'm talking rivers on the scale of the Columbia River all over the place here. The primary places that this would include would be up near Bellingham. We had one in this general vicinity, if you will, and then down by Centralia, Chehalis, that were just dumping material and more material, to the point where we start getting magnificent, lovely sandstone layers that we all know and love today. If you've hiked out in the gorge, you've seen these striking cliffs that do have trees growing on, which you don't have. But anyways, at this point in time, though, these layers are being built up so much, so quickly, so rapidly, that they are just, I mean, you go down near Carbonado area, you have 10,000 feet of total material. Down here near Black Diamond, it's more like 6,000 to 8,000 feet of sandstone material. But the fact that this sandstone material here in the Green River area was laid down between 46 to 42, almost said 52, 42 million years ago, 4 million years in a geologic time sense, nothing compared to anything that she experienced on her long-term scale. So it really kind of goes to show that while Washington is still a baby, and you will, a lot of our history has happened a lot quicker than on the other side. But it's also important to remember, too, that we are still in a hot, humid climate, just like what she was going through. Mm-hmm. Your plains were more wide open. They're peat bogs, if you will.
Yeah, we've got the Piedmont region and the coastal plains.
Correct.
And we've got the peat coastal forests.
So our coal is a little different in that story. Because we have these massive rivers that are dumping so much sediment cumulatively so quickly, our layers didn't have much time to form. However, they formed slowly relative to a human life, in these big open plains area. Not saltwater marshes like what you'd have over in Renton, because we don't have clam fossils. We only have leaf fossils here, so it was a mostly freshwater environment. However, in her neck of the woods, you could be in freshwater, you could be in saltwater, you could be in brackish water, which is kind of a mixture of both. On terms of scale, the fact that our layers were so close to then forming cascades at the same time, because as things start to transition from that 42 million years, then we start getting the birth of the cascades, which metaphorically cuts the valve off of any sort of rivers that were coming and dumping in here, because now those mountains start to rise. We have a little bit more direct erosion at that point in time. For us, the actual layers of material here, the sandstone layers, come from both the Wenatchee Mountains as well as Mount Perseus near Skykomish. I don't know if you've ever driven out that way up Highway 2, but if you've ever seen the striking Mount Index, it's the mountain right next to it. But Mount Perseus is also one of the earliest examples of cascade volcanism, so it kind of makes sense if there's no cascades, it's right next to a river, how we'd get it. Besides the point, I won't completely bore you. So now we have our gorgeous mountains. If you walk outside today, we can see the lovely Mount Rainier Tahoma right down there. But it's because of these mountains that kind of cut that metaphorical valve off. But it doesn't mean that we didn't have volcanoes in this area. Because if you go down towards Enumclaw, you see all those little random peaks that are all over the place. Those are all little cinder cones that popped off of material coming off the side of where we see the cascades now. In the actual gorge itself, we had hydrothermals, not necessarily direct volcanism, but we had hydrothermals that has resulted in mercury mines. We know these as the Royal Reward and Cardinal Reward mines, but it was because of that heated material coming from the Cascades that we were able to get that rather unique spot. It's one of my favorite places because it's such a unique story out here, among the very many unique stories out in this area. But there's one more challenger that we have to face, and it's our most recent challenger, and that is the ice. You didn't know this, and I'm sure if you're a farmer in this area or you garden, you know that we have a lot of clay when you're digging your gardens and whatnot. Here in the Black Diamond area, we didn't necessarily have the crazy layers of glaciers like if you go up near Seattle. There was more about 3,500 feet of total ice, which is bonkers. But we're here in Black Diamond, you're closer to about 1,000 feet of ice here at the most extension part of it. If you go out towards Cumberland and the Ravensdale and the Canasket area, you can see evidence of that. If you drive out Headworks Road, you can see up on the side of the hill where the Lakeside Industries is mining that gravel material, and it covers the side of Mount McDonald, just to show you how crazy the glaciers and how much material they were just pounding into this area. But that's important to note too, because that is something our miners had to deal with here. It's not like in the Appalachias where, you know, you've got sandstone right in there.
Not just that, and we have consistent coal seams, so
Exactly.
we know where to go.
Exactly. We, on the other hand, have this stuff sitting over the top of our beautiful sandstone layers and coal layers, which is a nightmare to get through, but we did it. And I'm sure all of you know here in Black Diamond, we certainly did it. That's why we're still here to this day. So overall in Washington, we touched on it a little bit with hers. We have a few places, and my blinker doesn't want to work, but we have a few main places that are still here. Now, it's important to note, I mentioned earlier that all that material was coming from, for at least Black Diamond, this general area right in here. You may be wondering yourself, okay, the Cascades are there, but why is there no coal layers in here? Well, remember, the Cascade Mountains are there now. That uplift of igneous material basically burned off all that coal. If the Cascades weren't there, we would look more like her area with plentiful coal because we would have continual rivers coming from the area. It's just our geology with the rise of the Cascades and the incoming of the Olympics kind of screwed the pooch for us.
So to put it into perspective, when the mountain building in the Appalachians was happening, Africa was on the subduction zone side. So the mountain ranges that are in Africa come from both the subduction zone from when the two plates were coming together, but it also comes from the collision. So the Appalachian Mountains, believe it or not, actually extend from about Georgia all the way up into Canada. There's also a section of it over in Norway and Scotland, and there's also a section of it on the outer part of Africa. That is all the same mountain range.
Which, speaking of mountain ranges, this is your general area, if you will.
Yes, it is.
So can we get some perspective of kind of where things are?
All right.
You know this area better than I do.
I do. Well, you can see the states. So our coal fields basically take up this entire area, whereas yours is really just the Pacific Northwest. Sorry, I am not a huge coal enthusiast, so this part is new to me. I'm more of rocks and how things work. So all of these areas relied on coal for a long time. That was their main economic source. That coal out there was used for their power generation. It was used for steel production. So that area in these mountains, completely coal reliant. West Virginia here is actually one of the largest producers in the Appalachian Range. They come out with more coal than any of the states combined.
Which compared to something like the #1 coal producer in the country, which is Wyoming, which, funnily enough, our railroads actually carry, the BNSF tracks here in the area, if you go down to Auburn, they carry coal from the Powder River Basin up through here. They go directly through Seattle. They go just across the border into Canada, right at the port right there, load them up on ships, and then send them off to the other side of the Pacific Rim, which I always think is really weird, because when I see those actual trucks and all that stuff going by, I'm like, what is going on? How is this happening? I'm so confused right now. But it's interesting, too, because you note that it's not just here for her area. I mean, we've got stuff further down here. We've got stuff in the central part of the country, more stuff here on the west side. And it's important to note that, remember, Washington, Oregon, and California are very young in the geological timescale of things. So in terms of scale, her area has had a lot more time to go through raising and lowering and raising and lowering, which allows time for those sedimentary layers to continually build up on top of each other, even if it's in different generations, if you will, of coal, versus we basically had one shot. And that was one shot was between 46 to 42 million years ago. But if the Cascades hadn't gotten in the way, or the Cascades had shrunk down and then rise back up, we'd have more coal in comparison to your general area.
Yeah. And I was debating on whether or not I was going to get into this in the beginning. But this entire area right here, that was all part of the Appalachian Formation. There were some events that happened at different times, but a lot of this folding happened at the same time. So if you think about it, this is technically not the Appalachian Range, but it was built from the creation of the Appalachian Range.
Meanwhile, we just have our little 500-mile section here from Washington down to Northern California. So we're small scale, if you will. So it's important to note, so if you live here in Black Diamond, you're very well aware that we have slope mines. And we have slope mines because we have very complex geology here, despite us being so young. So it's important to note that the Appalachians, a little bit easier of a time when it comes to mining. I like this graphic because it kind of shows the different things that we're necessarily talking about here. So for example, Black Diamond, a lot of our coal mining stayed to this side. So we stayed with slope mine, shaft mine, pretty much all of that is the Appalachian stuff. They had a lot easier of a time with things. We'll break it down a little bit. This is typically what you'll have with Appalachian mines, drift and contour mines. On that side of the country, they're able to follow the seams a lot better than we are. Your guys' offset is like what, 10 to 30 degrees roughly?
About, and I mean, the seams are, miles thick in some places.
Exactly. Us, on the other hand, over here, we're talking coal seams that are 30 to 60 degrees on the slope. And if you can imagine being a miner on your side like that, not very easy to do. So they can use nice machines that can get in there and do the digging for them, and they can do it quick. Your seams can take, they can bang out significant parts of the mountains in a month very quickly. But
there's some risks.
Yes, there's risks. If you don't stack your ceiling right, same thing with here. If you're not doing your ceilings properly, down they come.
Collapse, methane explosions.
Exactly. So coal mining, no matter how you put it, is dangerous, if you will. But there's also mountaintop mining, which Sun will be able to tell you a little bit more about mountaintop mining.
All right. Mountaintop mining is exactly what it sounds like. They take the entire top off the mountain. They will find a coal that they want to access, and they will cut down the trees on the top and level it all out until they can get to that coal. And while that is safer for humans, environmentally speaking, that is catastrophic. And they still do that over there to this day. And with this,
I can sense anger happening right now.
I'm really emotional. He took me over to Cumberland before this, and that makes me emotional. So I'm already a little
that's a different presentation.
So here they will cut off the entire mountaintop, which they don't take into consideration that you're uncovering all of these minerals and these coal seams, and this is all leaching into our water sources. This is all running down the mountain and going into the rivers and the creeks, and it's affecting wildlife, it's affecting plants, it's affecting everything around there because they're taking an entire ecosystem away.
Would you believe it that water rolls downhill?
Yeah, it does.
Kind of something crazy I would have never guessed.
And with Appalachia, with us having such large coal seams, and it's pretty much everywhere. You can find coal just about anywhere. They don't really care what mountain they cut off. They really don't. And they still do it. So
it all comes down to the mighty dollar, if you will.
Yes.
Because for us out here, we didn't have much of that option because, again, our coal seams are doing the Macarena practically. So one of the two main kinds of coal mines that we had out here was stuff like this, shaft mines. Now, these are more typical of, like, if you go back to, like, Wales and England, an area where they did that, they're similar because, again, remember, those mountains over there mesh with her mountains, too. So they're not as crazy in the terms of how you get to it. But we did have a couple shaft mines out here, such as Franklin number 2. If you've walked out at Franklin, you've seen that giant hole that's up there. It's real fun to stand over and drop rocks in. Also partially used as an air shaft and, you know, an educational tool for kids to freak out when they look into that black abyss, if you will. But it's less impactful because you don't have to have a bunch of infrastructure spread out around it. But it's also more expensive because it takes a lot of energy to pull coal through buckets up to the top. So not exactly efficient, but safer? Maybe? Depends on your definition of is. Because the other one, and this was the primary mine here in Washington, was slope mines. These would actually go down similar to the angles that we would experience in this area, and then from the bottom they would spread out on gangways. We did a lot of room and pillar mines here, which is you dig, shift over, leave their pillar there, dig, leave a pillar, dig, kind of using it as a surrogate way to kind of create a roof, if you will, so it doesn't fall down on you. Not to say that it didn't fall down on you, because that happened quite a few times. I was actually reading a story recently that was talking about a Finnish miner out in Ravensdale, that there was a roof collapse on him, and it was back in the 50s or something like that. He was underground for, I think it was 13 and a half hours, pinned from his chest all the way down before they finally got him out of there. His exact words when he was quoted, they said, "How are you doing?" His exact words were, "It's tough to kill a Finn." Which, as a Finnish person, I'm very proud of that statement, because yes, it is. But this, again, is our kind of more generalized mine in this area, and it's less impactful. Not to say it's not impactful, but it's less impactful than, say, removing the head off of a mountain.
And slope mining is used still to this day in Appalachia, but mountaintop mining is the most, it's what they use the most.
The primary funding,
primary,
if you will. So let's compare a little bit. Compare and contrast. Yeah, exactly. So this is the fun part where we start comparing sizes, if you will. So Appalachia has us on size. I will just admit that from the get-go, because just in 2022 they did 160 million tons of coal, which is a bonkers number.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Just in a crazy amount, because our last year of coal production, which coal mining stopped in Washington in 2006, was only 2.6 million tons. There was no coal mining here. That was done down in Centralia, Chehalis at the Trans-Alta mine. But the absolute top end of the scale that we ever accomplished, once again, Trans-Alta, 2003, 6.23 million tons.
And in 2022, 160 million, that's a quarter of the amount that they've gotten in 1 year out in that area.
Now, it's very difficult to find the most data, because you're bouncing between different countries and states. So it's difficult to kind of add all that number, but the highest general number that we found across all states was 476.8 million tons of coal a year.
But consider these numbers. When we think about the states that are in the Appalachian Basin, 160 million in 2022, I would say about 120 million tons of that came from West Virginia. West Virginia is the top producer.
Besides the moonshine.
Yes, they got moonshine too.
So then, just to draw one more kind of final comparison in terms of size, we're talking specifically here in Black Diamond. I'm not including Centralia, Chehalis. I'm not including Bellingham. I'm not including Roslyn, Cleo. I'm just here in the Black Diamond area. We only have about 70 million tons left. Out of the 55 million tons that we did, which is an impressive number in its own right, but I'll admit you've got us by 3 times overall.
We have more area though.
That's true. That's true. Which goes into the how much they have left of the 60 to 90 billion tons of coal. That sounds like a lot,
but it's not.
It's really not.
They've been coal mining in the Appalachians since the 1800s, and that's what's left. So imagine how much was there before we started mining.
But it's still there theoretically. So now comes the important part, the very important part, the actual physical difference in our coal. We are breaking down a lot here. We're putting this in very, 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 very layman's terms, because the actual geochemistry when it comes to this kind of stuff is very complex, but is also very simple. Do you know how you test for information like sulfur and ash content in coal? Anyone want to take a shot in the dark? Anything at all? You light it on fire. You literally just light it on fire, and then you're able to test for both ash and sulfur content. So for Black Diamond here, we primarily have between subbituminous to bituminous coal. We had lignite and we had a little bit of anthracite, but not as much in comparison. Our coal burns anywhere between 10 to 15,000 BTUs. So think of your average everyday grill that some of you may go home and use today, which, you know, it's a nice day for grilling if you ask me. Our coal seams averaged about 10 feet. Now, an average doesn't mean exactly 10 feet of exact coal. There's sometimes little layers in there, and sometimes this is ash content. Sometimes this is called bone coal, which is kind of a weird middle ground-ish. Sometimes there's sediments that are in between it. It's not pure in the sense of like you're looking at one specific coal seam. The biggest one we have out here is 40 feet, which you can actually go see if you go down to the Sapotsky salmon ponds. It's actually sitting up on the hill behind it. It's very impressive to see if you ever get the chance to go there. But we also had a very low sulfur and ash content in comparison to...
Ours is a little worse, but just a little.
Just a smidge.
Well, you also have subbituminous, and we only have the one type. And like I said, we have some seams that are miles thick. Yours said you would put on there that there's 5 to 13 feet of thickness. You know, that's general.
I said average.
Average, yeah, that's average. But there are some places in West Virginia where the coal seams are just miles. And like he said, there's sediment in between, but it's miles.
Huge.
Yeah, huge. So our ash content is a little bit worse, which kind of means, hold on, I have my notes. Again, I'm not a coal person. All right. So we have a higher sulfur content, which means our coal burns dirtier. Our coal is not as clean. It's not as environmentally friendly.
Not that there is a thing.
Coal itself is not environmentally friendly.
Not that there is an actual thing.
Yeah, ours is a little worse. And with the higher ash content, that also means there's more material that's left behind afterwards. So, which means more pollution, more chance to run off into streams, and there's more risk for pollution in our area. So mostly because there's more coal.
So the primary use-wise, it's interesting because we had a lot of, when the company came up here from California, their primary purpose was getting coal for household use or heating uses back down in San Francisco, California. It's always San Francisco. I don't know what it is about the West Coast. It's weird. But because of that low sulfur and low ash content, if you were to burn that, hypothetically speaking, in your stove at home, you have less to clean up and your house doesn't smell as much. Not to say coal doesn't smell. I scared my wife one time lighting coal on our driveway on fire, and it did not smell all that great. But besides the point, I don't want to talk about scaring my wife.
I can already see her face.
Yes, exactly. However, her coal, on the flip side of that, while it did power industrial and housing over there, hers was primarily used for industrial scale things. So think like
steel production. It was used to heat because it burns really hot. So they used it to create things out of steel.
You ever wonder where Pittsburgh, California gets its coal? Or Pittsburgh,
gets it from West Virginia.
I was thinking of Pittsburgh, California, because that's pretty close to where Black Diamond came from. But again, that's a future presentation.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's Pittsburgh with an H, not Pittsburgh with a G, which is actually a funniest side note. I was talking to some folks down in Pittsburgh, California, which is near Nortonville, where Black Diamond's from, and I said, Pittsburgh with a G, that's kind of strange. And they were like, yeah, we had an H at one point in time, and I was like, you changed the name from with the G, with the H to without the H? And they go, yeah, back in the 40s, the federal government mandated that we had to change the name. We had to get rid of the H because they were tired of confusing the 5 other Pittsburghs throughout the country with the H. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, of all the things that the legislative branch of our federal government could come up with to do at that point in time, and they picked taking one letter out of 5 towns' names, besides the point. So kind of going back to what we were talking about, coal ash is the catch-all term for what's left over. So when you burn coal, the kind of gray, ugly bits that's left over, and sulfur, which is the selling point, if you will. You don't want smelliness in your house, even though it's going to smell, no matter how you put it, and it's dirty. This is a little closer look at those numbers because they were kind of small down there at the bottom. But here in Washington, to give you a little bit more detail specifically about where our coal went, when John Henry closed in 1999, who has any idea about who the 2 primary purchasers, or actually I guess 3 technically, who were the 3 primary purchasers of John Henry coal? Any guesses? Nobody? First one, Portland Cement, bingo. Second one, the University of Washington, at their power plant that was there. Bonus points for anybody that gets the third one.
Prisons.
There's a bigger one than that.
Well,
South Korea.
South Korea.
Don't ask me how that deal went down. That's a question for Bill Campbell, not me. But South Korea was listed on DNR documents of being the place that we bought coal from, which just further proves that our coal is better because our coal is Pacific Rim wide, while yours stayed local in your cute little steel foundries. So Appalachia has still some dependence on some coal, as we were discussing a little bit.
So, with the downfall of the coal industry, due to environmental concerns and just overall safety concerns, because like he said, mining coal is not safe. It's not safe at all. So, with that, a lot of these small mountain towns out in the Appalachians, they were coal mining towns, much like Black Diamond. They relied on it. All of their population was employed by it. It was the bread and butter of their society. So with renewable energy and that competition and, you know, the whole green movement where we want to move away from these natural resources that are not renewable, these places have really suffered. A lot of these places nowadays, especially West Virginia is one of the worst states because they have the largest amount of coal and they can't mine it anymore. So those places especially have seen job losses, what's the word I'm looking for? Infrastructure issues because they don't have the money to fix their infrastructure. Social and cultural impacts. These people, mining is all they know. So mining is being taken away. The whole history of their towns are being taken away to a lot of these people. So a lot of these little mountain towns have transitioned with modern society into tourist towns. People come out to see the museums, they come out to see the beauty, they come out to see the parks. A lot of their income nowadays relies on tourism.
Sound like a town that you're thinking of right now? Because you notice how our town ended coal mining. We shifted for a little while. What was going on here? Population decline.
Mm-hmm. People leave because they need to make money.
What became Black Diamond's most significant resource? Land.
Bakery.
Right. That's a good point, actually. That's what kept Black Diamond afloat for 20 years, was just the bakery alone. But Black Diamond went through a very, very similar thing. After the decline of coal, after the new Black Diamond mine closed, after John Henry closed, when they closed out in the Franklin area. I mean, I don't know how many of you remember in 71 when they closed Franklin number 10. I've been trying to find the video of it for years because allegedly it's out there somewhere, but just know getting information from NBC, nay, impossible. But I'll let you know when I find it. So Washington is ahead of the curve, if you will, when it comes to that. So as it stands right now, hydropower is the dominant resource here in the state. 60% of Washington's power comes from hydropower. PSE, which is who you pay your power bill, though, still uses coal mines that are over in Montana. So it's kind of a put the problem over there and let them deal with it, if you will. But it's interesting because 23% of our power through PSE comes from that coal mine that's over there. 27% comes through hydropower. And there's a very good chance that the museum you're in today is either powered by that coal plant, the wind farms over in Ellensburg, but more likely it's powered by the Bonneville power system over there. It's either powered by Grand Coulee or it's powered by one of the several dams that's along the Columbia River. It's most likely directly coming from Grand Coulee Dam. And if you've ever been to Grand Coulee Dam, beautiful piece of engineering over there. So for us here, Washington State, I'm sure you're well aware of this, has been pushing more for green energies. It's a growing pains. We won't get into that kind of whole argument. But for lack of better words, sorry to say, coal mining is 99.9999% chance not coming back. Depends on who you ask if that's good or bad. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't have this problem.
This is the Appalachians mountaintop mining. And if you look, it's everywhere. There, everywhere. The peaks don't look like they used to. They're taking them away. And out on the East Coast, they're trying to battle this. They're trying to come up with solutions. And the best solution they've come up with, which I personally don't agree with, is putting giant wind farms out in the Atlantic Ocean.
That's a whole other
That's
presentation.
a whole nother conversation. So the East Coast, the Appalachian region, everyone out there, they're trying to shift away from coal. They're hoping to kind of phase out of it, I think by the 2040s, around that area, and switch completely to renewable resources. I'm a huge advocate for solar, personally. And out on the East Coast, yes, we're a moderate, temperate climate, but we don't see rain like you guys. So solar is a good option out there for us. And you know, there's a lot of places out there that they do have solar fields. They're trying, but coal is a huge reliance for that area.
Have they heard of nuclear?
Yes, there's
Actually, ironic that you mentioned that 3 Mile Island just got announced that it's reopening.
Yeah.
So it's funny, but it's interesting though, because what Black Diamond went through when the coal mines started to close is kind of the phase that they're in.
Y'all are dealing with the environmental repercussions right now.
Correct.
Our area is dealing with the economic repercussions of phasing out of the coal mining industry.
They're kind of behind us, if you will, because what we're suffering from now is one of 2 problems. Number one, the environmental problems of what's left over. If you remember back in, I believe it was 2020, 2021, something like that, the Navy coal fire that happened out near Cumberland, where basically the hillside was on fire because somebody lit a fire out there, and they had a significant problem with a fire that occurred out there for several months. And ironically, the best way to solve that problem was literally like dig it out, spread it out like you would a campfire, spray it down, and then bury it. And it solved it, the fire's out, if you will. But the other major concerns that we have, and here's your little PSA to stay on the trail, we still have very open coal mines out here. Very, very, very open coal mines. That is not water that you want to go be in a jacuzzi. Matter of personal opinion. I don't think I would want to go for a swim in that, but this is not that hard of a hole to find. I'm not going to tell you where it is unless you want to come with me, and I'm totally willing to like share certain kind of locations depending on if you're cool and whatnot. But we are past the point of the economic decline, and we are just at the point now of dealing with the ramifications of what happened. It's not that it's bad. It's the same thing with her. It's not that it's bad that it has happened. But the thing now is, how do we recover from that? How do we move forward? Whether that's through solar, whether that's through nuclear, the open conversation that people need to be willing to have is, do we stick and stay? Do we completely transition? Do we kind of have this? It's a very complex topic that I'm not going to sit here and bore you about.
And on another note, I just want to add something. You're talking about how you have all these open mines. There is a mine fire in the northern Appalachians that has been burning for 60 plus years.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm sure.
60 plus years. And there are some smaller fires all up and down the Appalachians. So we have a lot of the same risks with these abandoned mines just burning. And with the amount of coal we have out there, those fires are devastating because there's so much coal. That fire is still burning because they have no way to put it out. None. They can't flood the tunnels. They can't do anything. They just have to sit and let it burn until it burns out.
They don't have the kind of water that we do, how we were able to flood some of our underground mines intentionally or unintentionally, which did happen a couple times on our mines. But Washington's coal future looking forward, as I was stating earlier, 99.99999% chance that we're not going back, which again depends on who you ask. But little known fact, we still have one active coal plant here in the state. Now near Centralia Chehalis, the TransAlta plant number 2, which you can drive right by it. You can see the coal piles, you can see the cars coming in. They get their coal from the Powder River Basin. You can still go down there and see it today. The interesting thing about TransAlta, though, is the amount of remediation that they have done there is, besides the wide open plains that have, don't belong there, you would have never known that there was a coal mine there. It's very fascinating to see. If you ever get a chance to go just drive down there, strongly recommend it. But again, touching on the fact that we are past that point, we have moved past the point, you guys are dealing with a little different issue.
Yes, we are dealing with a huge issue because a lot of these people that have You know, a lot of these towns are generational towns. These families have lived here, worked here, mined here for hundreds of years. So a lot of these people have a really hard time letting it go. And it's a big problem. It's hard to convince these places that there's other opportunities. And I guess a lot of people out there are really just scared because big transition like this, nobody really knows what's going to happen. So by 2040, hopefully we'll be moved away from it and we'll be able to be in the same kind of space that Washington is, where we're just coming up with solutions and kind of band-aiding the environmental things that we've done out there. But right now it's still kind of a really big fight to transition.
But that's the interesting thing about a band-aid, if you will, is it's interesting towards the end of this when we were coming up with this. We thought it was going to be a straight fist fight, but if you really contemplate it, Black Diamond and the Appalachian area share a very similar history.
Mm-hmm.
We are very tough people. Coal mining is not easy.
Mm-mm.
It never has been. Our miners, very tough, and they left a legacy of being tough and working hard in these towns. There's no denying that. I've never met somebody with a bad work ethic in Black Diamond. Never met somebody with a bad work ethic from the South, Appalachian area, no matter how much shit I flip you.
It's a great area.
So while our mountains might be younger, her mountains might be old geezers, we get to witness this beautiful geologic story and the people that are associated with this, and how both of us have had the ability to witness this. Ultimately, I will say that you and I aren't so different. But you still suck.
Appalachian.
So at the end of this, though, we weren't planning on this. However, obviously, stuff has happened since then. And because you have experience with this directly, I wanted to have her touch on this just a smidge to give you guys kind of an actual view of what's going on down there with recent events.
So this was completely unplanned. I was not intending on going into this, but as everybody knows, a couple weeks ago, Hurricane Helene hit. Appalachia was not prepared. Appalachia has never seen hurricanes like this, maybe hundreds of years ago, but they don't see this. So their infrastructure was not up to date for a flash flood that large. There were some places that got 31 inches of rain, all in the span of 2 to 3 days.
That's how much rain some of our towns get in a year.
31 inches of rain. There were entire towns, Banner Elk, Hot Springs, Marshall. These towns have been completely wiped off the map.
Main Street is now a river.
Yes, it is a complete river at this point. There are still recovery efforts going on out there that have just at this point turned into recovery, not rescue anymore. And I don't want to. My family and I, we go camping out in this area a lot, so the devastation that they've seen is truly off the charts. So
it's important to note that we might see images here in the Pacific Northwest of what's happened, and not just here, but also with Hurricane Milton that came through the other day.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important to note that some of these towns, the people that are there, the reason we don't see some of these images is because there's no road to get there.
Asheville had every single road that went into it wiped out.
So it's important to note that we don't get the complete picture, but it's also incredibly important to note that the people down there are still.
They are getting to it. Like you said, the people in these mountains are strong people. They put their work boots on and their gloves, and the entire state of North Carolina really has gone out there and is doing everything that they can to try and help these people. Like, these areas they used to be coal mining areas.
And now
these
gone.
places are poor. They rely on tourism, and this time of year is when the tourism is the most important for them. It's fall. All the colors are starting to change. People are starting to come out there to go camping. Like, this is their tourist season, and it was completely destroyed by Helene.
So we're not asking for donations because as a museum we can't do that. However, if you do want to find...
These were the rainfall totals.
Yeah, we forgot about that one. Yeah, so what is that?
This is within the 3 days. 3 days. There are towns that are not there anymore.
I think Black Diamond's annual rainfall is something like 28 inches or something like that. So Imagine 28 inches of rain in 3 days. That's, you better pack a swimsuit. So again, as a museum, we're not asking you guys to donate. However, these resources can give you kind of more of that quasi-direct information that we were telling you about. Not information in the sense of like what you'd see on major news networks, but like people that are actually in those parts that don't have roads, that barely have enough electrical to get that kind of stuff out here. So I'll put this up at the very, 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 very end of this, just if you want to scan these with your QR codes or look up the information and so on.
And I just want to briefly go over each one. The Cajun Army, that is their Amazon wish list. It is supplies, diapers, wipes, baby formula, hygiene products, food, anything that they can get out to these people, because they're having to fly supplies into some places. Baptists on Mission, they actually send volunteer groups out to affected areas and help feed people that have been affected. They help house people that don't have a home anymore. And then NC Disaster Relief Fund, that's the North Carolina Government Relief Fund. But all of that money right now is going towards the western parts of Appalachia to help with cleanup. I'm going out there myself as soon as I get back to go help with cleanup and put some boots on the ground. So really anything, even just making people aware that the news does not show you the devastation.
On that positive note, we do have some things coming up here at the museum. It's always important to note that continuing education through here. So next week, we have a revamped, brand spanking new songs of Black Diamond and How It Came to Be with both Steve and Sherry. Sherry, I'm calling you out. She's ready for the new Black Diamond and How It Came to Be presentation, aren't you?
Oh, next week.
Yes, next week. So we are, another kind of special one that's coming up here towards the end of the month too, is we are also going to have our fall membership meeting. And we also, and this is kind of just a nice exciting thing, we have been voted the best museum in the Pacific Northwest by voters through the Seattle Times.
Here, here.
Which is a pretty damn impressive, yeah, exactly. So that's a pretty cool honor, if you will, of being voted that. I'm not cocky about it and don't walk around telling people that all the time. And then after that, my next presentation for the museum is going to be Floods in the Valley, which we're going to talk a little bit about the construction of the Howard Hanson Dam. We're going to talk a little bit about Auburn, where I live, and Kent, and kind of what they went through in those early years, if you will. We're going to touch on some Mount Rainier stuff too, which there's some nightmare fuel for me living down in the Auburn Valley. But again, you got to come to that one. And then after that is Hometown Christmas, and that'll kind of wrap up the year. And then just to give you a little hint for next year, and this is kind of some foreshadowing, we have an unholy amount of presentations coming up here. So as time goes, I'm sure if you've enjoyed coming to the museum for years now, I'm sure we'll see you again. All that's left to do, does anybody have any questions? I saw your hand in the back right there earlier.
Well, I was just gonna say that electricity generated in eastern Washington requires transmission lines across the Cascades,
Yep.
which means the swaths of timber
Yep.
being whacked down. So it's not like there's no environmental consequences by generating power over
Yeah.
there with.
And that's a good point to point out too, is with, as you stated, the cumulative impacts when it comes to power production. We all need power. That's why the lights are on. There's no denying that little fact, if you will. But so you can see those BPA power lines if you head out towards Cumberland along the Green River Gorge Road, and then you kind of take that turn and you go out there. Those BPA lines right through the middle. And when they cut those lines, I mean, it's scorched earth policy on there because they don't want anything touching those lines. But like the BPA lines that are out there, they serve 1.1 million people throughout the South Puget Sound area. They even have power out in Grays Harbor County, which I think is just so strange. Like, how did Grays Harbor County get into that kind of an agreement? But that's outside my pay grade, if you will, when it comes to that. So, yeah, no, you're absolutely right, is that there is a cumulative impact on not just coal mining, not just hydropower, but any sort of power production. And it's incredibly important to have those kind of discussions when it comes to talking about how we get our power.
No free lunch.
Exactly. That's exactly how it goes. So, what you got?
You did much study on Younger Dryas stuff 12,000 years ago around here?
You know, I get that question a lot. And the question,
yeah,
it's a very Younger Dryas is one of those ones that it just fools everybody. but it's also one of those ones. It's kind of like when I go rock hounding, I always bounce between. I'll pick up a piece of jade and somebody will tell me it's jasper. I'll pick up a piece of jasper and somebody tells me it's jade. So younger dryas is kind of one of those ones that, to be honest with you, I don't touch because it can create kind of controversy quickly.
Could you define that for people who aren't from the area?
I think the man that researches it in the back could.
So what is it?
So 12,000 years, he was talking about the ice that was here. 12, the ice age was hoarding, all the ice age come down. It all went away really quickly because they figured a comet hit, but basically the two continents here, mostly up north, and melted the ice suddenly. That's why we got dry falls. They say dry falls was thousands of years, but it was probably actually a few floods over a very short amount of time.
And then on the flip side of that, though, some people have stated that with the Missoula floods at the end of the Ice Age, were several progressive floods, and they all ranged in size.
My personal thing on that is probably less than 5.
Yeah.
Because there is that little layer of the mountain states of ash in there where it got backed up, so it was over a fair amount of time.
But see, that's the fun part about geology, is that we weren't there to witness it, but we can have conversations like this to try to figure out problems that are so big like that. That's one of the parts about science like this that I love so much.
So I think Mount St. Helens really helped, a lot of people don't understand, it doesn't necessarily have to happen slow, it can happen fast, because Mount St. Helens dropped all the ash there, made all these layers, and 500 years later, well, how many layers to make that? No, that was a couple days. Whereas it still has 500 layers in it, but it was still a week or two or whatever. So
time scale is one of those funny things. So I was doing project research one time, and I found this really awesome map that a group of scientists had broken down Earth's entire history into the equivalent of a 365-day calendar. And if I remember right, it wasn't until something like September that Eukaryote life showed up. Right. And then it wasn't, I think we, if I remember right, we landed on the moon on December 31st at 12:59, 99, 99, 99, 99 seconds. Like that. So that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is her mountains, 500 million years sounds like a lot of time. 55 million years to us sounds like a lot of time. Our human time scale when it comes to, the 100 years that some of us will occupy this, nothing. And I think for me, at least, when it comes to geology, that kind of scale is so much fun to see. Because even 10,000 years ago, we think about that and it's like, oh, that's a long time ago. No, it's not.
Yeah, in the sense of how old the planet itself we've been here for nothing.
Actually probably quicker than that, if you will. Which is just so much fun. And
I've actually heard that the Grand Canyon could have formed in 2 years.
I heard that one.
I would believe that with water cutting through sandstone.
That's what they were saying, is that it was the Colorado Basin. It was actually uplifted, and then it filled up for years and years and years, made a massive, we're talking inland sea, and then topped. And once it topped, it fallen off and just dug it out in 2 years.
Yeah, we just, my partner and I actually just bought property in West Virginia, Colorado, the Santa Cristo Mountains, right off of another rift zone right over there. So, yeah.
Colorado's cooler than Appalachian. So.
I went to Utah a couple years back, and it's funny, we drove down, and it was the most boring drive. We still just going to St. George until like the last 3 hours, and it just changes from this Salt Lake City area and everything like here to, oh my God, this is gorgeous.
Yeah,
colors,
the red
layers,
sandstone.
Just weird. It was just some
Page is mwah,
that's a bucket list item for me. I want to go see it.
Fair enough. Anybody else, any other questions? Well, my only thing for you guys is...
I do.
What you got?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, so that old coal mine scene that used to be on fire in the, mid-90s and whatnot, that was kind of legendary in Auburn area, for kids trying to find the hot springs that was hidden in the gorge. Is that still, in fact, on fire, or do you think it's smoldered out by now? What do you think?
You want the technical answer, or you want the unofficial answer?
Yes.
The unofficial answer is I have been down there to where that is. Depending on both the time of year, groundwater conditions, and also just luck of the draw, it's not hot water in the sense of strip off all your clothes and dive in, but I have been down there and felt warm water.
Oh, it's warmer.
And warmer water than normal, but not like it once was back in the day when you see like the pictures of people like actually in it, which it looked really nice, but it's very, very subtle, but you can tell in that general area where it was.
Oh, interesting.
But it's not easy to get to. I'll just throw that out there too. It's another one of those ones, and that's another huge comparison, is you have so much more accessibility to your areas.
Yeah, we don't have to rappel as much.
Yeah.
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 I can climb up a bluff in no time. Meanwhile, you have to hook up all your
Yeah.
hooks and stuff.
Maybe
We got to work harder for it.
if they put out all those distilleries out in the mountain hillsides, they can put out their pulsing fire.
That's a fair point.
Just a trade-off.
Yes, exactly. So,
That industry.
to open up new opportunities, if you will. So, as we do with events here in town, we always do a raffle at the end of our things. Because you are the guest of honor, let me flip these over so there's no bias in this.
Do I get to pick?
You get to pick.
Next.
Lucky winner. Drum roll, please. Well, I don't have a drum, so. Not even gonna try.
All right. Do I read the number?
Yes.
8237342. Wait.
Bingo. He's got it. That was probably, that was honestly probably the quickest response I've ever seen. Because most people were like 1, 5, 7. I think I got it. Can you check it for me? There's that
Make
one.
sure it's right.
No problem. Once again, everybody, thank you as always for coming out. We'll see you guys again at the next one coming up next week.
Thank you.
And also, let's thank Sun for coming out all the way across the friggin' country. Jeez.
I really did it for the views.
Yeah.
I didn't do it for him.
Fair enough. Also, thank you everybody that watched this on the live stream. Hopefully it turned out very well. We'll catch you on the next one.
Whew. So apparently there was a police